Before you put a single plant in the ground, there's one number that you need to know. Miss it, and your native plant garden could end up costing way more than you planned. Hello, I'm Jacob with Naturalized Design, and I help busy families convert their grass lawns into beautiful, low-maintenance, native plant gardens that serve their family and their budget. So here's the question. How do you figure out how much your dream garden is going to cost before you start spending? Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you'll not only have the answer, but you'll know how to make that number work for you. In order to get there though, we have to start with one of the biggest mistakes people make when they try to figure out what their garden is going to cost. And that mistake is thinking in total dollars instead of dollars per square foot. So if you come to me and say that my budget for my garden is $10,000, is that enough? I'm not going to know how to answer, because what are we talking about? Do we have a small 100 square foot garden bed, or do we have a full acre plot? For the garden bed, you have more than enough money. You can do anything you want, get the most incredible plants that you want. They can be as mature as you could dream of. For an acre, $10,000 really isn't enough. And that can be really hard to hear that, what felt like enough money just isn't close. And so that's why it's so important to not think in your total budget, but to really focus on the dollars per square foot. That can tell you whether your budget is appropriate or if more work needs to be done. And we'll kind of circle back to that later on what you can do when that, dollar per square foot isn't appropriate. But for now, let's talk about what is an appropriate range for your dollars per square foot. So I'm going to put them up on the screen, and here in the Kansas City suburbs in 2025, these are kind of the ranges you're looking at. So if your dollars per square foot lands at 5 or lower, you've got a shoestring budget. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you're going to have to really use your wits, really use your resources, try to get as much as you can for free or reduced cost, and it's going to require more effort on your part. There's definitely no way that you're going to be able to hire somebody. If you land in that $5 to $10 per square foot range, that's a very comfortable DIY range. You're probably not going to have really high-end materials. It'll mostly be like plants and mulch. But there's absolutely things that you can do in that range as long as you're comfortable doing them yourself. When you get from the kind of 10 to 15, now you can start talking about hiring professionals. It's not going to be for the whole job, but you can start doing that for all of the kind of critical pieces, like if you have a patio or a deck or kind of those pieces that maybe it is better to bring in the professionals. And above that, you do actually have a professional dollars per square foot. So you're in a very comfortable range. You can hire out what you need to. You can DIY what you want to. And you're in a very good place. Now, you don't need to memorize these numbers, because I've got them in my garden design guide linked down in the description below. So absolutely download that, check that out, not only for this table of information, but also for additional helpful information as you're designing and budgeting your garden. Now, as I said, these are for Kansas City area in 2025. These numbers are going to change. And how do you know what the numbers are for your area? Well, thankfully, that's very simple to figure out, because you can use Google, or you can use ChatGPT or AI or whatever you're kind of comfortable with. But I'm old, I'm comfortable with Google. And you just put in and search, what does a garden cost per square foot in my area? That's all you have to do. That'll give you all the information that you need. And that can kind of tell you what the professional installation costs are. From there, you can kind of use simple percentages to kind of work your way back to the levels that I just gave you. So about 75% is going to get you into that some DIY, some professional. 50% will be a comfortable DIY, and 25% will get you down to that shoestring budget where you're really going to have to be creative. Now, let me know, for me as an engineer, all these calculations are very simple and straightforward. Let me know if it would be helpful for me to put together a calculator down in the comments below. That's definitely something that I can work on. So why are these the most powerful tool when it comes to budgeting? It's because they can be used both forward and backward. And what do I mean by that? So backward is kind of what we were just talking about. I have a $10,000 budget. Is that appropriate? So if you take your $10,000 budget and you divide it by, let's say, a 500 square foot garden, that puts you at $20 per square foot. You know right away, okay, I'm in a very comfortable dollar per square foot. I have some freedom to design, to bring in professionals, and to kind of do what I want to do. Versus if you come in at, say, $5 per square foot, again, that's in that shoestring budget range. It just gives you an idea of how healthy your budget is and how realistic it is to do all at once. Now, that's going backwards. That's a good gut check, but it's not going to be detailed enough that you can kind of create a final budget per se. It's really just for if you have a certain amount of money, you have an area that you want to work on, am I in the range? Going forward is really where you can get detailed. So like I said, on Google, you can kind of search garden installation. Well, you can do that for each component of your design. So if you have a deck and a patio and a planted area, you can say in Kansas City, what is the dollar per square foot charge for a paver patio? And it'll pop up with different dollar per square foot options. So if you have a 200 square foot patio, you can multiply that by the number you find, and that tells you a good budget number for that patio. You can do the same for the deck, same for the planting area. And from there, you can create kind of your final budget number that you're targeting. Now, a word about these. They are estimates, and that is very important to understand. So if your estimate comes in at $6,000 for a patio, don't be surprised if it comes in above or below that number. Always remember that there needs to be an amount of wiggle room or contingency or just a percentage on top that helps ensure that where things don't quite line up with your estimate, you're not dead in the water. A good number for contingency is about 10%. If you're DIYing, you might want to bump it up to 25%. Again, just gives you plenty of cushion just for those things that you don't think about or that kind of come up later. It really helps you be prepared. That way you don't get halfway through your project and realize you're in trouble with money. That's the worst place that you can be. Now, we've got our dollars per square foot. We're not liking where they're landing. We have two options, and that with this that we can use in order to figure out kind of how we can adjust our budget or our plans in order to make that number work. So it's a very simple division. So we've got on top is our budget, on the bottom is our square feet. If we're not liking where this dollars per square foot is landing, then we need to either increase our budget, make the number on top bigger, or we need to decrease our square footage, make the number on the bottom smaller. Either one will increase that dollars per square foot number. Which one is the right one to do? That really depends on how quickly you can make the money in order to increase your budget, or with how much time you're willing to devote to this project. If you have a lot of time, you're planning to live in this house for a while, it's okay if you do it in parts and pieces. Break it up into phases. Maybe this year you can only do the patio. Next year you can worry about planting. Maybe this year you do the backyard, and then over the next 5 years you can slowly change your front yard. By limiting those areas, you actually are able to increase that dollar per square foot, and then you're able to do more kind of in the time in a smaller area and for kind of the budget you already have. Meanwhile, if you are limited on time, your best bet is to increase the amount of money you can devote to the project. Obviously, that's much easier said than done, but that is kind of how you can play with those numbers in order to get where you need to be in order to accomplish your goals. That single number I mentioned at the beginning, the cost per square foot, it may be the most important tool in your budgeting toolbox. It is the difference between a garden that feels overwhelming and one that is actually built. By understanding the costs at the beginning of your project, you're able to make better decisions. And that will lead to a garden that you actually enjoy creating, and a process that you enjoy being a part of instead of fearing it. That is what leads to a sustainable garden for you and for nature. Now, I mentioned earlier that the cost per square foot can be applied forward or backward. At this point, you're prepared to apply it backward, but in order to apply it forward, you have to actually have a garden plan. Now, if you're unclear of how to do that yourself, I've got a video that details the process, and you can watch it up here.